Okay, and we are live. How is everybody doing today? Hey, it is Larsen live. That was Devil Dogs by Sabaton. It seemed rather appropriate. It's past week was the week of Independence Day, and a bunch of Swedish guys singing about the Battle of Bella Woods just seems to make sense to me. Did everybody enjoy July 4th? I had myself some nice barbecue, and then I got right back to studying because nothing says America like endless bureaucracy and civil service exams. Well, actually, it kind of does come to think of it. Well, gee, Mr. Halleck, I mean, surely you already passed the content knowledge exam with flying colors. But you got to pass two more exams, hurdy-dur. Yeah, so I'll just tell you people up front. There's not going to be a video tomorrow because, well, you can thank the New Jersey Board of Education for that. Useless sinecure hacks. Yeah, but anyway, that was a nice song. That was a nice intro. And well, I'm glad somebody likes America because people in America don't seem to. Yeah, I noticed a marked amount of apathy for the holiday, honestly. July 4th is canceled because women can't abort. So says a bunch of female celebrities who may or may not have even had children themselves. Ladies, please, you can still get abortions in other states. That's not why July 4th should be canceled. July 4th should be canceled because the country is quite clearly dying, quite clearly doing a bunch of stupid crap, decaying into absolute insanity, and the history and heritage of this nation is disparaged every second of the day. That's why July 4th should be canceled. And that's why I opened up the show with that song because I so desperately want to remember a time when America didn't suck. Oh, but America was racist back then. Some 300-pound woman is screaming right now. True. But you know what else America was doing? Less imperialism than the other major powers. Not perfect, but even the European empires said we were less destructive. We fought wars that were worth fighting, and we had a functioning culture. And yes, I do adore the Beau Art, Art Nouveau, Art Deco style that you always see in those World War One propaganda posters. Winsor McCay and Nell Brinkley and all that. Once again, a uniquely American cultural art form that people just stopped giving a damn about. Why? I don't know. Okay, Ponythroat says he always found Sabaton to be somewhat cringe-inducing in regard to subject matter. I don't understand why you would say that, sir. They're just a bunch of nerds singing about history. I'm sure they provided the score from any Naruto AMV. Do people even watch Naruto anymore? Isn't it Boruto now? Like Son of Naruto or I so don't care. Also, I wasn't aware that there was a type of shoe called Sabaton. Do people even make AMVs anymore? I mean, that's bringing me back to high school. But yeah, going back to the Beaux Arts and Art Nouveau, I mean, I am technically aware that those artistic styles started in France, but I think we put our own unique spin on it. I mean, art historians separate the Italian Renaissance from the Northern Renaissance, don't they? I mean, you don't say that Da Vinci and Albrecht Dürer were the same guy. Anyway, let's put aside our dreams of a country that didn't suck and we'll get right to the news. I have some more to say about the America that once was, but we'll get to more of that later. Rick says that he likes Sabaton, great workout music. Yes, I agree. I work out to them myself. Anyway, let's, like I said, leave, the old, weird, but interesting America behind. Let's go to the hellscape we live in currently. In this past July 4th, there was a shooting in Highland Park, Illinois, a wealthy suburb of Chicago. 6 dead. The culprit was some noodle armed, chinless dweeb who, oh, look, he was known to the FBI and on SSRIs. Robert Cremo was. Yeah, who could have seen that one coming? Once again, the guy had had numerous violent outbursts before, outbursts that would have disqualified anybody from purchasing a gun in a sane country. He was on a cocktail of pharmaceuticals, which should also discourage you from owning a gun. Disbar you, I should say. He threatened to shoot up a place not too long ago, and he was also some kind of rainbow-haired lunatic who wasn't he like a transvestite or something? Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with dyeing your hair or cross-dressing, Susan, but there is something very wrong with being on SSRIs and having a history of violence and threats of the same. There is also a problem with being on the FBI's radar and then once again sitting on their hands doing nothing. Once again, I ask you people, what does the FBI do exactly? I would wager that at least half of the mass shootings that happen every year could be stopped if law enforcement was proactive in monitoring and stopping them before they could act. That is, of course, assuming that they want to stop them and that they're not allowing them to happen to justify disarming the people. That would be crazy talk. I don't honestly think that, truly. Never attribute to malice, which can be attributed to stupidity, as they say. Give me 1 second. I'm getting a text message. Let's see what. Okay, it's nothing important. Very much related to this, New York passes red flag laws requiring you to turn in 3 years of your social media history before buying a gun. As I said last week, in theory, I am in favor of red flag laws. I want to be proactive and actually do something to stop mass shootings instead of just handing out thoughts and prayers like some willowy douche. But look, this is a highly discretionary thing. Who determines what a red flag is? The Soviet Union very much manipulated mental health services to imprison and abuse anybody who dared to voice dissent to the system. And I feel like this could be abused very similarly to that. If you could somehow guarantee that this wouldn't be abused to punish people, you know, punish people that some cat's eye glasses wearing 300-pound woman with purple hair doesn't like, I would be in favor of red flag laws. Again, speaking purely hypothetically. But I don't really see how you can guarantee that wouldn't happen. Okay, Ponythroat says Sabaton is an armor plate shoe. There are a bunch of nerds who make songs about history and warfare. What do you think they're going to name their band after? Okay, Ponythroat says he wore woman's clothing during the shooting, but in all likelihood it was an attempt at a disguise. Yeah, you probably shouldn't, have a beard if you're going to dress as a woman. Just saying. And yeah, since we're talking about guns, you know, I'll say it. I am in favor of, strict background checking, licensure, mandatory classes in safety and proper usage and things like that. It should be treated like car licensure. Yeah, you can buy whatever you want, but give them tests and precautions and all that. Yeah, sorry if that makes me a cuck or whatever. Yeah, in some theoretical libertarian realm, it would be nice if we could just have shit without all that paperwork. I mean, as you could tell from my opening salvo, I despise bureaucracy too. But such liberty can only exist in a virtuous culture, and we are not a virtuous culture. We have not been for a very long time. So until we once again become a virtuous culture, an intelligent culture, yeah, maybe we need some laws to keep you morons under control for a bit. I, of course, use morons in the, general sense. Obviously, my listeners are all Ubermenschen who don't need control. Oh, and speaking of law enforcement incompetence, let's go back to good old Uvalde, Texas. So in that shooting, a new report says that they literally had the guy in the sights of a rifle before he entered the school, but they had to wait to radio, HQ for permission. And then they sat around for an hour and 48 minutes as he massacred children. I'm not a police officer or a soldier or anything like that, so, dismiss this as the ramblings of an amateur if you'd like. But I'm pretty sure the dude visibly had his rifle out as he was approaching the school. I mean, you can't put that in your pocket. You would have seen it. And I don't know about you, but if I see somebody approaching an elementary school with a gun drawn, I'm taking the shot. It's time to shoot first and ask questions later at that point. Jesus, so of all the states to be a bunch of mealy-mouthed dweebs hemming and hawing about, is it okay for me to do this? Me. You wouldn't think Texas would be that state. Like, goddamn, whatever happened to rootin' tootin' shit-kicking Texas? All the times for you to not live up to the stereotype. This is not the time, Texas. Okay, Ponythroat is still rambling on about Sabaton. Of all the pieces of a knight's armor, name yourself armor. Why? The shoe. Would have been cooler to, name themselves Greaves or Codpiece. Well, to be fair, I mean, I agree. Like, they should have named themselves Codpiece. Or maybe it's because of the obscurity that they named themselves after Sabatons. I mean, calling yourself like Sword or Battle has to be a little cliche. You got to name yourself after some article of clothing. I mean, Pauldron could work. But Sabaton is kind of punchy. I like it. Okay, Witcher 8686 says all mass shooters are raised by single moms. Yes, quite a lot of them are. And as I always like to point out, quite a lot of them are on a cocktail of chemical pharmaceuticals. The mental health apparatus in this country is absolutely dismal. And yeah, a lot of them are on the radar of the FBI and they ought to do things to, like, stop it, but they don't. Ponythroat says you can't take down that shooter until Morbius is over. Damn you, sir, you stole my joke. I was about to mention Morbius. But yeah, like, I mean, I'm disappointed in you, Texas. I went there once when I was a kid. I liked it a lot. Like I said, I do have friends who live in other places down south, and this is really the time to embrace the shit kicking stereotype. Texas, you blew it. No, they spent an hour and 48 minutes sitting around playing with themselves. I sure hope watching Morbius is worth it, gentlemen. I mean, an hour and 48 minutes is exactly the length of time that it takes to completely sit through Morbius. Hey, let's leave spree shootings aside, because we have the Akron, Ohio police shooting, which at first seemed to be the media's most beloved topic. The innocent, unarmed black man who's probably going to college and is going to, like, cure cancer or something, being shot by evil fascist cops eating funnel cake and pretzels and what have you. Yeah, it turns out that's not quite what happened. Turns out that the guy had a gun. He had shot at the police before leading them on a chase, and then he threw it away so that unarmed black man shot could be reported. Yeah, apparently he then reached for his waistband during the standoff, and then he was shot 60 times. Okay, with that being said, you know, I don't support this guy, but yeah, 60 was a bit of an overkill. Believe me, I'm not a back the blue bootlicker, but seems to me that this was not an innocent victim. Seems to me that if anything, the guy was committing suicide by cop. Apparently, he didn't really have like a prior history before. His wife or girlfriend apparently had died recently, and he was in a very miserable state emotionally, and he wanted to die himself. I mean, I feel for the guy and all, but committing suicide by cop is putting a tremendous emotional burden on the police officer who has to plug you. Believe it or not, despite the narratives going on, most cops and most gun owners, for that matter, they really don't want to kill people. I mean, it's very emotionally upsetting. I shouldn't have to tell anybody this. I mean, I studied jujitsu, but I would really prefer not to have to, like, choke somebody to death on the street. Most people who train for violence, they don't want to commit it, believe it or not. Okay, C Punk Messiah first praises Sabaton, then he says that the gunslinger archetype has been lost, referring to the Texas thing. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Uvalde police chief who's getting a promotion for some reason, he he looks like fat Emperor Xerxes from 300. And yeah, like I mentioned this before, but in another stream, but when that, University of Austin bell tower shooting happened, which was really the first school shooting that ever happened in America. Yeah, you look at the police officers there. That was also Texas, of course. They were these, like, hard ass dudes. Like, they looked like they could kick some ass, and they actually deputized just some civilians with rifles, and they actually took down the guy. Probably would have killed a lot more people if they hadn't. Yeah, I don't know what happened, Texas. Jim Tuner says cops are taught to unload their clips when they draw. It's the safest thing for them to do. I mean, yeah, but then again, I would ask why you need, like, I mean, let's assume you're using like a what are these, like, Berettas is like the standard issue pistol for most police departments. What was it got, like 10 clips, 11 if you count the one in the chamber. Do you really need six cops to take down one guy? I've seen plenty of videos of, like, a group of cops accosting, like, one homeless guy, and yeah, like a lot of, I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah, a lot of cops are just complete pansy asses. And I don't have respect for those guys, and that's why I can't back the blue. Witcher also points out that back in the 60s, cops weren't fat. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm gonna get. I have more to say, like, near the end of this stream about fatness, but we'll get to that. Okay, Ponythroat says that's a smart way to commit suicide. Suicide by cop. I mean, it takes the onus off you, but you're putting the onus on, uh, an innocent person who, again, doesn't get up every morning wanting to shoot somebody. Most cops, anyway. You know, as they said in the first episode of Game of Thrones, he who makes the decision should swing the axe. If you want to kill yourself, be a man and do it yourself. Ponytail then goes on to explain how you can't shoot yourself 60 times unless you piss off Hillary Clinton. Well, yes, of course. Okay, so speaking of crime in the general sense, sorry. Yeah, there's a new AI algorithm which claims to predict crime in American cities before it happens. uh, I'm kind of curious as to how it's going to be doing this, and I'm furiously pulling at my collar of my shirt. I'm curious as to whether or not this will be yet another example of the ongoing racist artificial intelligence issue that repeatedly seems to come up. Needless to say, I'll be very amused to see how this backfires against the nice woke people. Just like how the body cams and dashboard cams in cop cars backfired once they realized that, most of the people who get pulled over probably should be getting pulled over and act like belligerent jackasses. And now they're demanding that they remove body cams and dashboard cams. At least some of them do. All right, let's get off that crime beat and we'll talk some good old American politics. Ilhan Omar, Democratic senatress from Minnesota, and member of the Funky Squad, or whatever the hell they call themselves. Uh, yeah, she was booed at a concert by her co-ethnics. Apparently, not only was it American Independence Day, it was also Somalian Independence Day. They booed her ass right off that stage. They called her an embarrassment to their community. Now, I wasn't aware that the Somalian community had so greatly turned against their representative. I mean, she is, after all, the first Somali congressperson, or is she a senator or congressperson? I don't remember. Whatever she is, I wasn't aware they had so greatly turned against this pioneering representative, but there it is. I'm curious as to why that is. Perhaps as a hardline leftist in the woke sense, not so much the traditional labor sense. Perhaps she angers her constituents, who are more conservative, as one might expect from people who come from a pastoralist Islamic rural patriarchy. Maybe they find Omar embarrassing because she sham married her gay brother for citizenship. Or maybe it's because her family was in tight with Siad Barre's communist dictatorship, and when he was gone, the Omars decided they had to get the hell out of Dodge before they got, lynched by an angry mob. Or maybe Somalian men have embraced the good old American tradition of being annoyed by uppity schoolmarms, which Ms. Omar very much is. We'll have more to say about the Funky Squad in a little bit, but first let's look at some comments. Okay, Ponythroat says, wow, AI can predict crime in American cities. I could do that with a demographic map. Yeah, that was kind of what I was alluding to. I didn't want to say it outright, of course, because I'm a nice person. Okay, Jim Tooner talking about Ilhan Omar says that the people she represents are woke hipsters in the city, Minneapolis and St. Paul, I guess the Twin Cities. Doesn't really have anything to do with her community. Well, apparently so. Okay, Ponythroat says Somalis turn against their leaders all the time in Somalia. That's why there's a shortage of petrol and tires there. Isn't necklacing more of a South African phenomenon? I mean, I admit I'm not super knowledgeable about what's going on in the Horn of Africa. But yeah, I always associate necklacing with more South Africa. But yeah, going back to another member of the Funky Squad, Kamala Harris officially hits the lowest approval rating of any vice president in American history, 28%. Bear in mind that Dick Cheney bottomed out at 30%, and that was after he shot a guy in the face. Dick Cheney literally looks and sounds like Oswald Cobblepot, and he's more likable than Kamala Harris. Once again, people forget just how fundamental the man versus schoolmarm conflict is to American culture. And I think that very much has its roots going back to, like, who settled the country, the Puritans in the Northeast. You had, like, the New Yorker and James Thurber and, H.L. Mencken and people like that. They, were always kind of against school marming. If you haven't read that book, Albion Seed, it's really, really fascinating. I recommend it. I'm going a little off topic here of my prepared remarks. But yeah, Albion Seed is this history book talking about how the settling of America, the original 13 colonies, was basically settled from 4 regions of what is today the United Kingdom, and how those 4 regions and their cultures greatly influenced American culture up to the present day. In the North, you have the Quakers and the Puritans. Then, in the South, in the Midlands, you had the Cavaliers and the Scotch-Irish borderers. And really, if you read it, I mean, it kind of does explain everything about America. I mean, in the North, you have, like the snotty Puritan schoolmarms, but also order. You have the nice Quakers who basically wipe themselves out just by being too nice, which tends to happen in history. In the South, you have the Cavaliers, snotty rich boys who became plantation aristocrats. Then you've got, the Anglo-Scotch borderers, people who, by necessity, were forced to be incredibly violent and brutal people. These are the people who settled Appalachia. And, a rough and brutal form of valor is their greatest virtue, and obviously they have many vices. Yeah, it's, again, like, I would. Why do you think I always kind of talk about these sort of like old American kind of cultural trends? Because A, I feel like it needs to be promoted. I find it fascinating, and the more you read about it, the more it ties back into history. Like, I definitely see like kind of a reaction against Puritan school marming. Bear in mind that the Puritan colonies basically had probably more rights for women than any place on the planet at that time. And yeah, I definitely see like those kind of elements in mainstream American culture, pretty much going up until the 1990s. When that culture, like the last vestiges of it, died. But yeah, I mean, like I always say, fighting the schoolmarm is your duty as an American man. Yeah, it's these sort of vestigial memories of anti-schoolmarming still linger in our gestalt cultural consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, going back to Kamala, I mean, I noticed that like even black people don't really seem to like Kamala Harris all that much. Okay, some dude says, "Would I ever do a PUA holes on David D'Angelo?" I have no idea who that is. I mean, yeah, sure, I'd be willing to look into him if I had any idea who he was. I mean, I guess I'll have to do some research. Yeah, that will be for another time. Yeah, but I was starting to think, like, why do black people not like Kamala Harris all that much? Probably has something to do with that fake, black church lady voice that she puts on to disguise the fact that she's a rich girl who was born in Canada and lived in California most of her life. I mean, I'm certainly not the first person to point this out, and studies have literally shown this, that liberals will like put on fake, black accents, AAVE accents when talking to black people to show that like, they're down. They're down with the struggle. It's you know, I think it was Kamala who was like, I carry hot sauce in my purse all the time. Yeah, because black people be putting hot sauce on shit, yo. Like, fucking really? I mean, what you might as well just pull. Like, what are you gonna put on blackface Hillary Clinton? You gonna pull out some rhythm bones and start, clackety clacking? Okay. Ponythroat asks, would Kamala the Ugandan giant get a better approval rating? Yes, yes, he would. Well, unfortunately, he passed away, but oh shit, he'd probably still be better than Kamala. So I said it from the beginning, from Kamala's like presidential run. They should have elected, Kamala the Ugandan giant, old Jimmy Sugar Bear Harris. But yeah, speaking of Somalia again, Meanwhile, in Ilhan Omar's home city of Minneapolis, Somalian dudes are driving around in trucks shooting fireworks at people. I mean, literally rapid firing them like a belt fed machine gun at people. One might call it a technical. Now, of course, it's not likely anybody was seriously hurt by this. Still kind of a dick move to shoot fireworks at people. I mean, I hate to sound stereotypical, but, gadding about in your, converted weapons truck shooting machine guns at people seems to be a grand old time in East Africa. And of course, let's also point out that Minnesota was settled by Scandinavians, I should say, and it looks like they're just as naive and soft as their cousins, you know, in the old world. Oh, you betcha. Anyway, more on American politics. Jeb Bush locked his keys in his car like a dumbass. This might have been from like a while ago. I don't care. I saw it on Twitter recently. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got to say. Jeb Bush locked his keys in his car like the pathetic, doddering loser that he is. He had to go to CVS to use their phone to call somebody to help him out because apparently he didn't have his cell phone either. And, my God, it is astounding how much of a flaccid weenie that man is. Like, he's like some like 1940s, like, milk toast character. Yeah, I mean, he basically is like Casper Milquetoast, the comic strip character. And geez, I'm digging far back for that reference. Yeah, Jebby, he's not a boisterous, charismatic failure like his big brother or anything. Jeb Bush is the human equivalent of farting in church. It's like, like people didn't even really make fun of him like during the election because it's like picking on a kid in a wheelchair. Just, you would feel bad. I mean, Big Brother George, you could kind of pick on because, he's funny. But Jeb is just, God, that man's pathetic. Okay, let's see. We got some nice comments here. Okay, Jim Tuna says Kamala, seen by many as a very white black person. Well, I mean, her mother is Indian, and her father was a very light skinned Jamaican guy. So yeah, she's. I mean, if you consider Indians to be Caucasian, which I suppose they are technically, uh, yeah, I mean, she's probably more Caucasian than she is, black. Okay, Ponythroat says Canadian politician putting on blackface. Surely you jest. Ah, yes, we can't forget Justin Trudeau's, Mr. Popo cosplay. Ponythroat says drive-by fireworks are for people too lazy for the knockout game. I mean, it still probably hurt somebody pretty bad with a firework. I mean, when I was like a little kid, I might have like thrown like a little firecracker at some members of my family, and it burned them a little bit. But that was nothing serious. But I was like 7. I was stupid. Mitchell Valentino gives me $20. Thank you, sir, for Jeb Bush's keys. Yeah, I mean it's just enough to buy a Slim Jim, and he'll be able to open up his door. Ponythroat says, imagine locking your keys in the car outside of Planned Parenthood and having to go inside to ask for a coat hanger. Oh boy, that's a good one. Okay. Jim Tuner says people took Jeb Bush seriously until Trump took him down and he never recovered. The emperor has no clothes moment. Yes, yes. You know, I myself like got bullied when I was a kid, so I probably shouldn't be laughing at this, but seeing like the way that Trump effortlessly took down Jeb Bush, like I will always like just for that, like I'll always, give a little props to Trump. Because I mean it was literally like, some scene from like an 80s movie. I had like the blonde bully picking on the nerd and the nerd just crumbled. God help me, I laughed at it. Jeff Westcamp says the next step is drive-by diarrhea. Don't people like? I mean, I've heard some reports now and again about people like pissing out of like windows and doing like drive-by like peeing and stuff. So, yeah, it's not too far off. Yeah. So going back to old Jeb with his stupid little exclamation point. I've recently, speaking of history books again, I'm a huge nerd. I've recently been reading the book Wasps. The rise was it the rise and fall of the American aristocracy, or I'll just open it up in a second. It's on an ebook because I refuse to pay for things. Okay, let's open this boy up. Wasp, the splendors and miseries of an American aristocracy. Yeah, it's about exactly what it sounds like. And, the Bush family are very much that, despite the fact that the sons LARP as Southwestern good old boys. And yeah, it talks about how this American, Northeastern pseudo aristocracy, started out pretty impressively and became a bunch of degenerate failures and buffoonish clowns. And yeah, Jeb Bush manages to be both of those things despite having been a former governor of Florida and a millionaire. But yeah, that's splendors and miseries sums it up. I mean, say what you will about them. Any class of people that could go from like Nathaniel Hawthorne, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Teddy Roosevelt to the Bush brothers, that's a pretty abject fall. I guess all aristocracies end up becoming inbred losers at some point, even in ones that aren't true aristocracies. Well, all those damn people work for the CIA now, anyways. Speaking of diarrhea, did I read your Conan fanfiction? No, I did not. I'll have to look into that. Been a little busy, broham. But yeah, anyway, let's stop talking about WASP failures because the Irish Catholics got to fail too. Joe Biden actually did two very silly things this week. He read the stage directions on the teleprompter like Ron Burgundy, which is kind of funny. It was like, repeat, end quote. Curiously, I am in charge, sentence end. But more than that, Joe Biden, Grandpa Simpson, declares that, yeah, America leads the way. $40 billion to Ukraine. Meanwhile, as hordes of homeless people crowd around barrels on fire and the country gets worse and worse every day. America leads the way. Yeah, compare that to the Devil Dogs song I opened up the stream with. Oh, the Hellfire seems more welcoming every day. Speaking of leadership, which I wish we had, sorry, the Georgia Guidestones blew up. One pillar was blown up, and then for safety reasons, they brought the rest of it down because it would be like off balance or something. Boy, I bet Ted Turner's really mad about that one. I'm kidding, of course. There's no proof that Ted Turner put those Georgia Guidestones up. I never got why people were so upset about the Georgia Guidestones. I mean, 90% of those tenants on the Guidestones are just basic, like, live, laugh, love, liberal horseshit. It says you got to keep the population below 1 billion. Well, yeah, we kind of do have to keep population under wraps. I mean, as Steve Saylor likes to put it, there's the world's most important graph, which is going to show that every population center is basically going to, level out and reach fertility or go below replacement fertility in the next 100 years, with the exception of sub-Saharan Africa, and that's gonna be an issue. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why they don't advocate population control. I mean, eventually it would even out, but who knows when that's going to be. And really, people, do you think that the NWO would so brazenly put up their tenants for everybody to see them? I ask you that. Would the NWO be so stupid to do that? I mean, come on, I really don't think there's any NWO. I mean, I joke about, the powers that be, like the World Economic Fund and Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and Zuckerberg, wanting to make everybody into bedraggled peasants as they rule the wastelands. But that's the thing. They're just being destructive for their own sake. It's just petty tyranny. I don't think they really have any long-term coherent plans beyond ruin people's lives and reinstate feudalism. I mean, I don't think there's going to be any one world government. There's going to be a bunch of fiefdoms. There's going to be, chaos and slow burning, bush wars. That's bush wars with a lowercase b. But nothing coherent like a one world government. I mean, should we be worried for the future? Yeah, but there's no NWO. The only NWO that ever existed was under Ted Turner's payroll. Speaking of billionaire Ted. Okay, so we got some comments here. Jim Tuner says all great families tend to fall apart in 3 generations. Yeah, you got that right. Look at the Kennedys. And for that matter, what have the Roosevelts accomplished recently? Okay, Ponythroat asks, am I going to bring up the monument like I blown up in Georgia? I did right after you posted that, actually. Jeff Westcamp is poking fun of Joe Biden's, reading the stage directions. Jim Tuner says Georgia reacted to the explosion by reducing everything to dust. Yeah, I don't understand why you would react to a partial destruction with more destruction. You ever hear of cordoning off the monument? Jeff Westcamp says that, explaining why people hated the Georgia Guidestones so much, says that some fundamentalist people claim that it was a satanic monument. I mean, it just seems like some basic bitch, like New Age crap. Didn't seem all that bad to me. Okay, Jim Tuner says it's a religious thing. Lots of Christians are convinced that they were an altar to Moloch. They work themselves into a tizzy over the Guidestones. I mean, come on, the only altar to Moloch that exists is Hollywood. And then what? Okay, Ponythroat says the Guidestones also advocated for a one world government. Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it like in the event of some kind of like nuclear holocaust or something? It was to rebuild government because I'm sure the people would speak English. Jeff Westcamp says the future will be neo-feudalistic, just like Cyberpunk 2077. Yes, yes, it will. I have discussed that previously, and I'll continue to discuss it again this stream in a little bit. Ponythroat asks, Kennedy fell apart in 3 generations. I thought it was 3 bullets. Well, didn't a couple years ago, like one Kennedy scion ran for Senate and just got BTFO'd, which kind of shows that they're not at all prominent anymore. But yeah, I'm not too worried about the NWO. I mean, to be honest, would the wrestling NWO really be that much worse of a one world government than like Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum? I mean, the original NWO that was like slim and trim and got shit done. When you started bringing in like Virgil and like Ice Train into it, that's yeah, kind of diluted it there. Oh wait, no, I should say like Virgil and like Scott Norton because I don't want to shit on 2 black guys. That would be a little offensive. Anyway, the government continues to fuck up. Press Secretary Jean Pierre, she said, the economy is the strongest it's been in history. Yeah, no. I'm sorry. How can you look at America as it is today and say with a straight face that we're better than we've ever been? Again, put aside the goddamn identity politics for a second. I know that there was more racism back then, okay? It was certainly not perfect in the past. Can you look at the way things are now and say it's better than any point in history on the whole? I mean, just in economics, like it was better. I mean, we were once the largest creditor in the world. Now we're the largest debtor in the world. 1 generation is all it took to destroy this country that millions of men fought and died for, and you pulled it off. I don't want to bag on the boomers, but yeah, way to go, boomers. Okay, speaking of politics, a Tiara Mack, former schoolmarm and currently elected official from someplace, I don't really care to look. She says that teaching comprehensive, queer, inclusive, pleasure-based sex ed is a big part of my teaching career. Pleasure-based sex ed. How about scientifically based sex ed? Telling them how pregnancy works and how sex works in a clinical and analytic and dispassionate way. Give them the facts. It's a bit more important than teaching them why it's good to eat someone's ass or like, what type of edible condoms work best. Wait, no, edible underwear. Edible condoms wouldn't work. Yeah, wow. I'm just going to say it. There's no faster way to make sex lame and uncool than by having a pudgy schoolmarm lecture you about it. And maybe that's why the Zoomers aren't having sex because their sex ed teachers are all these fat, like, borderline women who are making sex seem incredibly lame. I mean, shit, I'd be turned off sex if I had to listen to some fatty lecture me about it. Oh, and then Tiara Max starts flapping her buttocks all about. No, no, really. She does a headstand and starts spastically buttock flapping. Yeah, maybe I'm alone in this. I hope not. Uh, I don't really find twerking attractive, like in the slightest. Do any of you? I mean, there's no rhythm to it. There's no artistry to it. Doesn't even look like you're really having fun with it. I mean, awkwardly staggering to a headstand and unrhythmically flapping your buttocks, that doesn't turn me on. I mean, a dance can certainly be sexy, with rhythm and artistry and moves that don't look like a dog trying to shake fleas off its ass. Yeah, nor does lifting up one leg and angrily twerking, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, got some comments here. Jeff Wescamp says America is not even holding its own anymore. We're so obviously going backwards. Yes, yes, we are. We're going to build more diversity bridges, though, which are set up by hack architects who don't know what they're doing, and then they collapse. Okay. Ponythroat says, appropriate that the wood chipper meme came up on the reel when the teacher thing came up. Yeah, yes. Okay. Jim Tuner says, sex ed always seems to come down to an uncomfortable gym teacher talking around it. Yeah, yeah, that was what my sex ed certainly was. I mean, I don't see why. I mean, it's really shouldn't be all that uncomfortable. I mean, I would honestly have a biology teacher do it. Just explain, like, hey, look, losers, this is gametogenesis. This is how pregnancy works. This is, embryonic cleavage. Here it is. Have safe sex. It really isn't that complicated an idea to explain how a condom works. Ponythroat says, left this school going to teach your kids how to milk a cow while blindfolded. Yeah, I remember that lesson too. Jeff Westcamp says that belly dancing is much sexier than twerking. Yes, I agree. Any kind of dancing is. Yeah, let's leave America behind. Cry the beloved country. And yes, I'm aware that was about South Africa. Anyway, now it's time to look about what's going on in the rest of the world. And speaking of South Africa, their progenitors in the Netherlands. What the hell is going on in Holland? There's like farm protests. Things are really popping off in Holland. The police have actually been shooting at protesters. The farmers are blockading with tractors. What the actual hell is going on in Holland? From what I gather, the protests are about new emission standards that the government passed basically by fiat. The farmers say that they unfairly are being targeted and it is impacting their livelihoods. And, fair enough to play devil's advocate. Farms do produce a fair amount of methane, but they also, keep us alive, especially since the Netherlands is second only to the USA in producing agricultural exports. And that's pretty damn impressive considering that the Netherlands is not even 1% the size of America in terms of land mass. And of course, let's also point out that a substantial amount of America is kind of useless for farming, at least until irrigation techniques were developed. They called the Midwest the Great American Desert for a reason. Let's take a look at what's going on in this country, the USA. I myself am looking into buying some farmland, and I better do it soon because Bill Gates, BlackRock, and the Chinese government are buying up all the land in America. Realistically, I'm hoping to do it by the end of the upcoming school year. Save up some money and what have you. I hate to keep beating the drum of post apocalyptic warlords hooning their hot rods across the wasteland, terrorizing the bedraggled neo peasantry. But it kind of seems like that's what they're doing. But of course, it's under the guise of fighting climate change. Yeah, I'm sure this won't tank the Dutch economy, just like a sudden forced switch to organic farming tanked the Sri Lankan economy, which is going on right now as we speak. Also, as I speak, people are storming the presidential palace in Sri Lanka, and the president ran for his life. Dare I say, this all might have to do with that great reset thing. Eat the bugs, peasant. Okay, we got some comments. A lot of comments today. I'm liking it. Jeff Weskamp says, speaking of drive-by diarrhea, the Dutch farmers have been spraying manure into government buildings. Yeah, as far as I saw, they also they stole some presidential jet or something. Ponythroat says the farmers are protesting a government policy to reduce livestock, control food supplies, and force people to eat bugs. The UN also made an article about the benefits of starvation. I was going to get to that in a little while. Thank you for reminding me. But hey, I mean, communists have always hated the kulak, the small landowner, the wrecker, the petite bourgeois, correct? Now, of course, when I say communists, I don't mean the, people at the World Economic Forum and, the big corporate guys. They're using, the pinkos in, you know, Western countries as useful idiots to destroy things. Or, I mean, I suppose you could call them communists in that they want communism for us and feudalism for them. Just like they hated the Canadian truckers a few months ago. And yes, I do still remember seeing Mounties literally trampling old ladies during those protests. Yeah, don't you forget it either. Again, I like to point out that this is literally the workers of the world seizing the means of production, and the leftists despise them. Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chin. Whoa, not like that, you fucking kulak. Put the chains back on. Whether it be the kulaks in Russia or, the wreckers in Maoist China, it's the same thing. Small landowners, small businessmen, they hate them. In case you couldn't tell, my sympathies are 100% behind the farmers here. And not just because buxom blonde farm girls are a bit of a fetish of mine. Wink. Kidding, of course. Let's be serious here. Serious discussion. Meh. Organic farming is great, but if you do it yourself, you can't force people who make their livelihood, farming to upend their whole business plan and, destroy their productivity. If you want to have an organic farm, grow your own garden. You know, grow some hydroponic buckets. I watched some YouTube videos about, growing potatoes in a bucket. I would do so if my landlord didn't explicitly tell me I couldn't. But yeah, as Ponythrow mentioned, this all might tie into a certain UN paper that went viral this past week. The UN says hunger can be a good thing because the hungry work hard. If we didn't have hungry people busting their asses in the hope of, staying alive, who would work? Hey, it worked for the feudalists. Okay, Jim Tuner says look up the ticker symbols land and FPI if you want to invest in farmland. Yes, I did not know that. Thank you. Yeah, I was looking into those free, kind of Homestead Act programs in Kansas, but they got a lot of applicants and a lot of them kind of run out. So yeah, I was also kind of thinking more kind of on the East Coast, something I could drive to in 3 or 4 hours. New Jersey or upstate New York might be nice. Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. And I drove up to see my niece. I saw acreages for sale on the way. And obviously when I get through the school year, I'm gonna have a lot of money saved up, so I'm just gonna be making a crap load more money once I do these damn exams. So I'm gonna have a lot of money to throw around. Larsen farms will live, damn you. Ponythroat says organic farming is good if you're a communist government with more organic fertilizer than they know what to do with. Yes. Actually, no, they still had potatoes, shortages of potatoes. It's yes, hello, Commissar. We have grown so many potatoes, they reach to God himself. Well, comrade, you must know that God doesn't exist. Yeah, well, the potatoes don't either. Old Soviet joke. But yes, the UN says, gotta keep people hungry. That's how they work harder. Next week, EU's prima noctis in you. Why it might benefit you. Ladies. Okay, apparently, it was later claimed that this was a satirical article, like a sort of Jonathan Swift type thing. Obviously, nobody would really be advocating for keeping people hungry. Yeah, we're all hoping so. Maybe I'm too nice for my own good, but I genuinely cannot comprehend the thought of not wanting to pay people a fair wage. And, you are aware that hungry people can't work as hard as somebody with a full stomach, right? Well, then again, people who write these kind of articles have never done a day of manual labor in their life. So, maybe they just genuinely don't know that. Obviously, I'm not some, jag off going, yeah, dude, we need the universal basic income. People should get money for sitting on their ass. This is a bit too far in the opposite direction. I support, people working and going to work, but they should be paid well. If there is a work ethic, going back to the Puritan thing, the Protestant work ethic, and, I do think that is in many ways a good thing. It's made America what it is what it was, a great country. I can't really say that today. If there's a work ethic, there should also be a pay ethic. And bear in mind, of course, that the Protestant work ethic came during, colonization, settling. So, the work you were doing was actually meaningful and impactful and, actually benefited you directly. Whether it be, fighting hostiles or, cutting the trees, planting the field, building a house. That shit benefited you specifically. And people are willing to work very hard if they see a clear benefit for it. But this, I mean, you talk about the work ethic, but I don't hear anybody talking about a pay ethic, noblesse oblige. Yeah, people need to fear death so I can keep up my standard of living. You know how I always talk about how good the American mid-century was? Yeah, something you should point out there is that wealth disparity was much, much, much less then. A CEO of a company back then made 50 times what his employees make. Now, what is it, like 1,000? And as I've said over and over again, my sympathy towards the wages is because I myself was a wagey. I've known the pain of having to pinch pennies so I don't have to get up, or I should say, so I don't end up getting thrown out of my shitty apartment. Yeah, it's not fun having to choose between rent and food. It really isn't. I've been there. Thankfully, I'm no longer there. And, like I said, if I do have some liberal leanings, and I think I do, it's mainly due to like the labor movement and things like that. The guy who wrote this article, he is a professor of human rights, might I add, at like the University of Hawaii, I believe. Yeah, human rights. Yeah, I suppose this is true in the sense of I'm going to hit this human with so many rights, he's going to beg for a left. You see what you made me do, UN? You made me profane a pure and wholesome Chuck Norris quote to be about human oppression. Now, I'm going to get back to, international politics in a second, but first, since I was talking about wages, I'm going to briefly look at the wages posting L's new account. It's not as big as the old one, so they don't post as much. Let's see what we got. Let's see. There's nothing like super. There's nothing I can really make fun of per se. It's just all really kind of depressing. I mean, I see a picture of like a movie theater with like popcorn strewn about. I don't understand how people can make such a mess in public. It's like the public bathroom thing. Like, do you not understand that people have to clean up your shit? Like, do you not act like you do at home? Like, do you throw your shit around at home? Like, hold your shit and throw it out. Like, I'm going to a public place. I'm just gonna like have a big garbage party. Woo! Fucking people. Okay, I got a text message from somebody I want to talk to. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, we got some comments. Okay, Jeff Westcamp explains to those who don't know what ius prima noctis is. I feel like everybody does know, but yes, it is the law of the first night, the right of feudal lords to sleep with a newlywed bride before her husband could, got to break him in. Okay, Pony Throat goes on that there's no evidence that it ever really happened. I can see somebody encouraging it. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they don't, it's divisive about whether it actually happened, but, they want it to happen. Although, realistically speaking, if your feudal landlord wants to bang you, are you really, like, do you really have any choice in the matter? Jim Tuner says the drop in food production due to the Ukraine war will finally hit the food market this fall. That's what I've been hearing. Ukraine was historically the breadbasket of Europe. Witcher 8686 says, how will history remember boomers? Probably as the generation that was given the greatest economy the world has ever known and blew it in 30 years. That's how it's going to be remembered. Anyway, yeah, big news from old Nippon, the land of the rising sun. Got to get back on track here. Former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is dead. He was assassinated by a guy with a homemade shotgun made out of pipes, seemingly that old, Four Winds pipe, gorilla shotgun, DIY. I am not an expert in firearms by any means, and it was apparently using homemade gunpowder, judging by the sheer amount of smoke coming out of it. I'm not aware of what exactly the motive was here. I mean, obviously, it's not good that anybody got assassinated. Of course, the tankies are on Twitter celebrating. It's like, oh, he was literally a fascist. I mean, controversies aside, like I know he went to like the Yasukuni shrine and things like that. I don't think it's fair to call him a fascist per se. I don't know the motive, but I do know this is yet another example of shit going out of control, yo. Speaking of Japan, we're leaving Japan, but it's actually kind of relevant because we're talking about England now, and they always say Japan is sort of the England of Asia. What is going on in old Blighty? Bojo is out. Not as prime minister, but as leader of the Tories. He's going to serve out his term and then peace out from politics. The Tories are the conservatives, right? Yes. More than 50 officials in his government have resigned. A Rishi Sunak is being talked about being the next head of the party. And oh my God, Vince McMahon was right. At Capitol Carnage, 97, I think it was. That was a pay-per-view they did in the UK. He came out to kind of rile up the crowd. He was in full heel mode at the time. I distinctly remember Vince is like, your next prime minister is going to be a man of Pakistani extraction. Everyone was like, boo. I mean, that was, of course, 25 years ago, but looks like his prediction finally came true. Speaking of old Vinnie Mac, he's paying out millions of dollars to women that he was sleeping with. The old genetic jackhammer, once again. How could the women resist a 67-year-old man with a Herculean physique like that? Okay, Jim Tuner, talking about the Abe assassination, says that the guy was a right-wing, like a far-right nationalist who was angry at Abe for not being right-wing enough. I have heard that, yes. It's an old Japanese tradition. Yes, he's like a little home improvement Yukio Mishima type. Yeah, imagine if Mishima made a little pipe shotgun. But then again, literary types aren't really good at engineering, from what I gather. And of course, I speak of myself in that. I'm a published writer, and I'm not much of an engineer. Back to America, the Washington Post. We're going to some more cultural issues now. The Washington Post finally says the quiet part loud, I should say. Let's declare independence from the founders of this country. They were bad men, you see. Again, why? Because they had slaves. So again, when does the line get drawn for guilt? I mean, you all know me. I mean, I'm kind of against idealized, glossy national mythologies for anyone. And part of me does enjoy seeing myths being cut down. But I emphasize for anyone and everyone. Either you cut down everybody's mythologies or you cut down nobody's mythologies. Because to do it to only some people but not others, well, that's just a propaganda weapon. To leave one side with self-loathing and cultural deconstruction, to leave another side with a strong cultural pride and mythology, well, you're pretty much cutting the throat of the former, isn't it? Who knows, you might end up guilt-tripping a country into handing over its posterity to endless teeming hordes of economic migrants from the global south without the slightest hint of resistance. You might do that to multiple countries, actually, but that would be crazy talk. And speaking of crazy talk, radio provocateur Alex Jones says that lurking amongst us are, and I quote, the cyborg slaves of Satan. On the surface, this is regular old Alex Jones insanity. On the other hand, is he entirely wrong, though? Kidding, of course. People aren't literally cyborg slaves of Satan, just metaphorically speaking. On the metaphorical third hand, well, Alex Jones was right about the gay frogs, so, who knows? Okay, we got some more comments here. Guys, I'm really liking these comments. Like, you got to talk more. It's good. I'm saying, like, you are talking a lot, which is good. But it's like you should, in every chat, like, I like seeing this kind of, feedback. Ponythroat says there was no motive given yet, but there are a few violent groups in Japan. I think Aum Shinrikyo, the leader, was executed under Abe, maybe Okinawan separatists. Well, yes, there are, violent groups in Japan. I did know that. And is Aum Shinrikyo even still around? I know they did that sarin gas attack in 95. Okay, Witcher says, I have a hard time shitting on Vince, even if he is a horrid human being. He deadlifts like crazy. Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time always shitting on him because, he had a pretty miserable childhood where he was, like, abused severely. Like, he didn't even know he was a McMahon until he was in high school. He lived with, like, a series of stepfathers who basically kicked his ass all the time. I do feel bad for him, like, for his childhood and things. But that doesn't excuse a lot of the shitty actions he does. But on the third hand, Vince is hilarious because he's like a cartoon, and I do the Vince strut, like, fairly frequently. Jim Tooner talking about, culture and such, so that the line of good history is drawn at 1966, but it's probably moving forward to 2008 when Obama was elected. Yeah, I've been noticing that too, but hey, commies always declare year zero, right? Ponythroat talking about the Abe assassination says the gun was made using homemade black powder, trivial to make, and ignited with an electrical charge supplied by two batteries, likely attached to some capacitors. I assume you meant capacitors. Yeah, that's I mean, there are rail guns now, so it's kind of impressive that he could DIY like a gun like that. Jeff Westcamp, Cyborg Slaves with Satan sounds like the title of a Rob Zombie movie or album. Yes, it does. I mean, I don't know if Charles Band is still alive. He could probably knock out a cheap little Cyborg Slaves with Satan movie pretty quick, for old, Full Moon Entertainment. Shinseki Evans says that Aum Shinrikyo likes to rebrand every decade or so. Uh, come on. I'm sorry, my contact lens is coming out, so I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that interruption. I'm back. Okay, Shinseki Evans says that Aum Shinrikyo rebrands every decade or so. I was not aware of that. Thank you for informing me. Jim Tooner, it was a literal modern blunderbuss. Yes. But yeah, now we got to get to some more cultural news. A Tema Okun, who, despite her name, is an extremely white woman, she wrote some idiotic list of the 15 characteristics of white supremacy, and this is currently going around in HR departments and like diversity hire groups, all around corporate America. What are those 15 characteristics of white supremacy? Things like perfectionism, urgency, individualism, objectivity, and more. No, I didn't write down all 15, of course. But yeah, things like individualism, objectivity, and perfectionism, and doing things on time, those are bad, apparently. More specifically, those are associated with whiteness, and thus, of course, they're automatically bad. You see, to be righteous, you got to half-ass your work, got to show up late, and argue eternally about subjectivity. Ms. Okun. Are you trying, in fact, to stereotype black people? I honestly don't understand who could think this was a good idea. Like, back in the day, those old minstrel shows and stuff, they used to stereotype black people as being lazy, dumb, argumentative, and pugnacious. And that was bad. Nowadays, we say that black culture is defined by laziness, ignorance, and being quarrelsome. And that's good. Okay, we got some comments here. Uh, well, it's not a railgun, Ponythroat says, about the Japan assassination. The batter just ignited the powder. It was basically like two open-ended pipe bombs attached to a handle. Well, again, I just hear like electricity being used to like shoot things, and that means a railgun to me. But of course, I know it uses electromagnetism or true railgun. This is using electricity to ignite powder. Again, you can see that I'm not an engineer, so excuse my ignorance. Ponythroat says, is one of the 15 characteristics of white supremacy having a triple-digit IQ? Well, I mean, higher IQ does lead to things like lower time preference and delayed gratification things. So, yeah, maybe. Yeah, somebody please explain this to me. How is promoting the lowest sort of like loutish, antisocial, lumpenprole, black people and their behavior to the status of sacred cows in our society? How is this helping anyone of any color? The crime rate is going up, and this is a major part of it. You take a large subset of a demographic that tend to be a bunch of surly, ignorant, low income, violent losers, and you give them carte blanche to continue being that. What did you think was going to happen? Oh, and by the way, most of their victims are also black people. So, if black lives truly do matter, you'd kind of demand some goddamn standards here. Can we not, like, promote higher standards amongst the community for all colors? Because, despite what I'm saying here, yeah, there's plenty of feral white lumpenprole losers out there too. Believe me. But why am I bringing up black lumpenprole specifically, you might ask yourself? Why? Because in old New York, old Knickerbocker town, there were two incidents that illustrate specifically what happens when you elevate lumpen proles to a sacred cow status. And since I'm name dropping old timey names for Gotham, I do still love the old weird America. Looking at these incidents, one might say that, dare I say, it was a hot time in the old town those nights. In some crappy bodega somewhere in old New York town, the owner of said bodega, or maybe employee, anyway, the worker, a man on the cusp of being elderly named a Jose Alba, stabbed a customer to death. A customer of an ebon hue who, presumably feeling entitled by being a sacred cow, jumped the counter over a bag of chips and was beating and choking this old man. The old man, in desperation, grabbed a knife and shanked him. You see, people, I told you, bodegas are crap. In all seriousness, good on this old man. When you jump the counter and you start choking somebody, you're putting their life in danger. And, I say this as somebody who has been choked unconscious in jujitsu, of course, not in a street situation, of course. Yeah, you're putting their life in danger, and I don't mind if somebody takes her ass out at that point. Apparently, the stabby's girlfriend wanted to buy some chips. Her EBT card was rejected. As a side note, there's something I find deeply distasteful about being given government subsidies to buy junk food. You see why I'm not totally against eating bugs, because bugs are nutritious. And honestly, part of me wants to say just give, the welfare cases bugs until they get off their ass and, like give them incentive to get a real job so they can eat real food. Plus, they'll be healthier. Well, anyway, yeah, her EBT card was rejected. She then went to get her boyfriend to beat up the guy working the counter. And he got stabbed for it. Jose Alba was arrested and put on $250,000 bail, which is then apparently reduced to $50,000 bail. Okay, Jeff Westcamp says she's approaching the old stereotypes about black people from the opposite side, so to speak. Exactly. I've been saying that for a while. Ponythroat says this could also be called 15 Reasons That White People Are Superior. Well, again, I mean, there's certain cultural things that, I would certainly argue are better. I mean, I don't want to go whole hog and say like there's just inherently like worse and you can't do anything about that. I mean, I think I definitely think standards should be enforced. Jim Tooner says if you can't make equality by moving everybody up, you can bring equality by bringing everybody down. Exactly. Okay, Pony Throat says that gun propellant being ignited by electrical charge is an ETC gun. Plasma-based ETC ignition is the future propellant. Yeah, we'll have to look into that. Again, I mean, I like guns myself. I occasionally shoot myself. Well, no, I don't shoot myself, of course, but go shooting, I should say. But yeah, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not really knowledgeable about this topic. I won't pretend that I am. But yeah, going back to the bodega stabbing, it's on security camera. It's a clear case of self-defense, despite the fact that people are like, "Oh my god, like you shouldn't want to kill the guy." I mean, all he wanted to do was just beat you up and take some chips. Like, God, why don't you just let him do it? I have zero sympathy for the guy who got stabbed. None whatsoever. Once again, this is why bodegas are garbage and they should not be celebrated. Yeah, that shovel-chinned, Chad from Schitt's Creek, Kansas, who made that viral TikTok about bodegas. Yeah, he wasn't wrong then, and he isn't wrong now. And that light bulb-headed little dweeb defending the bodegas still continues to be a light bulb-headed little dweeb. The other bout of New York City customer service idiocy this week, the Bell Fries shit fit. I should first explain what Bell Fries is to those of you who aren't aware. Bell Fries is a fast food joint. Well, it's like a not quite fast food, like artisanal fast food, if that makes sense. It's a restaurant that serves artisanal French fries and literally nothing else. Fancy highfalutin sauces, with like wine bases and like roux and stuff like that. You can get different kind of fries with various spices and what have you. It's a neat little novelty place, but it's not a place I've been to regularly. My ex-girlfriend, Vito, the one you've all met, she brought me to one once, in between spiritually castrating me. anyway. Anyway, at the Bell Fries in old Knickerbocker Town, three women who were much like the bodega attacker, members of the Dusky Brethren, they were charged $1.75 for some extra sauce. They then proceeded to completely lose their shit as lots of people who were also vibrant stood by and watched and laughed and recorded. They threw silverware and cups at the staff. They jumped the counter. They tore down the sneeze guard. And for some reason, one of them started angrily twerking. Again, it's not the first time angry twerking has happened. I've seen several videos of it. And I still don't understand the concept of angrily flapping your buttocks all about. I mean, in the event that I get angry enough to start assaulting a stranger, dancing is going to be the last damn thing on my mind. Oh, but the Dusky Brethren, they're so totally oppressed and fearful of the police. Black people are literally hunted when we leave our houses, eh, LeBron James? They're so oppressed and fearful, which is why they throw shit fits when somebody dares to defy their will and smash up fast food restaurants. I mean, that's how oppressed, terrified people act, right? I mean, you remember in Nazi Germany when like ratchety, loud, obnoxious Jewish women would regularly riot and smash up beer gardens and angrily flap their buttocks about as people laughed and clapped? I mean, that's what happened, right? Oh, wait, no, that didn't happen, because that's what actual oppression looks like. Oppressed people don't act like this. Like, hello? A tweet summed it up better than I ever could, and I'm paraphrasing here. If you wanted to do a serious hardline shift to a middle American radical platform, which FYI is something that I, support to a large extent, just force every American person to work a year in a fast food restaurant in a vibrant area. Yeah, no, that might be the trick. A fast food work draft, a year's term of service. I think it might lead to a big cultural shift. It'd be a nice 1-2 punch. You get some more sympathy for the wages, get more worker protections, unionization, and a living wage, and also open up people's eyes to some of the cultural differences we have in demographics in this country. Okay. C Punk Messiah says, "Are you talking about the war fought by a side with a bunch of Toyota Hilux trucks? What, you mean the Toyota war in Libya against Chad, where Chad, lived up to their name and absolutely wrecked Libya?" I wasn't talking about that, but yeah, that was a thing. Witcher 86, 86. In the future, people are going to end up learning the art of corpse disposal rather than call the cops after a self-defense case. Black market's going to rise for janitors. Yeah, I see that happening. It's like I said in another live stream a while back. With all this, defund the police crap, you think like it's going to lead to, peace and harmony and drum circles and passing the bong around? No. What you're going to get is the rich people are going to hire security for themselves. Poor people are going to have to, pay protection money to street gangs who, to their credit, they don't smash up random shit unless you pay them. You don't pay them, I should say. Or, just do vigilante executions into their own hands. I mean, personally, I'm kind of hoping that we'll bring back like Wild West posses so I can wear a duster and a cowboy hat. But yeah, I definitely see that happening. Shinseki Evans talking about the Bell Fries thing. Yes, it was vile. Ponythroat asks, "Is this behavior called a chimp out?" Well, I don't want to use that term, but yeah. Okay. Ponythroat is really into this gun thing. Are you an engineer, sir? Plasma injected ETC guns allow guns to use far stronger propellants, which would produce higher velocity bullets. The technology exists, but it's not small to be used in rifles. It's only for like cannons and things. All right, yeah. Well, I'm sure somebody will get to that. I saw a video of forgotten weapons. He literally had like a prototype railgun, which is just pure electromagnets, and it was pretty cool actually. Ian Kempster says she's broken. It's the shopkeeper's responsibility to feed her. In both those cases, yes. It should be worth pointing out that in the Bell Fries incident, one of the women who jumped the counter, not the one who was angrily twerking, but another one, she could barely clear the counter. So clearly, this woman doesn't need to be fed anymore. Jim Tuner says there's some new system for fast food pay where they can put money on a debit card on an hourly basis. It eliminates the payday problem, but charges them a couple percent off the top. You know what else you could do? You could, like, I don't know, take your money and buy healthy food. I mean, I just took a little bit of cash and bought like enough fruit for 2 weeks for like $10 at the supermarket. But no, we got to buy, you got to buy fast food. Stupid people. But yeah, I'm all for the fast food draft, so you can open people's eyes up to what goes on in this country. I myself have already done my stint in the fast food draft. I delivered pizza for a year, so I don't have to do that service. You guys might, but I don't. Okay, now for some pop culture news. Taika Waititi, who directed the latest Marvel whoop-de-doo, says if you don't want Thor 4 whatever, you hate fun and you hate art and you hate independent cinema. Yeah, because when I think of the paint by numbers MCU, I think of art and independent cinema, Taika. And to think that there was once a time doing a massive cinematic universe was genuinely something unique and innovative. I haven't seen his more artsy movies, but I don't care for his superhero movies. They're all kind of samey and jokey, like even by the standards of, popcorn action cinema. There's no gravitas, and these heroes aren't really taken seriously. I mean, if you compare like the Marvel movies to like, like the 80s action movies, well, there's a lot of differences. But the 80s ones, for the most part, took the hero seriously. There might be little, quips and jokes, but the hero was portrayed dead seriously. I mean, Thor's kind of a bumbling jackass from like what I remember. It's been a while since I checked out from the MCU, but he's not really taken seriously anymore. And yeah, whenever like possible, I do try to preach to the children like the '80s action movies because they're leagues better. It's what I grew up on, and they're better. If you want to see how competent Taika Waititi is, He also forgot that Natalie Portman was in Star Wars, which is hilarious to me. He's doing like the new, I don't know, I guess there's gonna be some new Star Wars movies or whatever, a new TV show. Like, I so don't care. I mean, as little as I care for the MCU now, I care even less about Star Wars. Yeah, I'll just say, like, the last truly good thing to be done with Star Wars was the Star Wars Trilogy arcade game from '98. Yeah, I said it. Yeah, Taika Waititi's like, "Hey, Natalie, you want to be in Star Wars? Can you imagine what it would be like to be in Star Wars?" He somehow totally missed the fact that she was literally in 3 Star Wars movies. I mean, look, the prequels are pretty bad, but are they so bad that you just wipe them from your memory? I mean, come on, like, they're bad, but they're certainly memorable. Now, this is pod racing. Okay, let's see. Ponythroat says, I am disappointed that none of the newly announced generation of tanks had an ETC gun or even CTA cartridge shooting cannon, despite them being viable at this point. Well, yeah, I understand with the defense industry, it's not really about like being deadly and effective and stuff. It's it's money. Like, we have a military that could pretty much curb stomp the majority of like any militaries on Earth, and they're making a shitload of money like doing things that are not necessarily useful, but they make a lot of money and they're good enough. So they're not going to like totally retrofit tanks with like new cannons and things. I mean, they're making money hand over fist with M1 Abrams tanks already. They're not going to like change shit up. I mean, why do you think they keep trying to push that F-35 even though it doesn't work? It's because they make money off it. And I'm going to make this implorement again to the Air Force. If you want to lend me one of those A-10 Warthogs, I'll take one off your hands. Jim Tooner says that with the new Thor movie, the MCU is moving into gay camp. I didn't even see Ragnarok or anything. Like, I totally pieced out after Endgame. So, I'm done. You know, although speaking of Marvel, if you want to do something like really unique, like I mentioned that Ruins miniseries a couple weeks ago, you know what else they could do? They could do like a miniseries of like the Nick Fury comics that Garth Ennis wrote. Now, this would necessitate, of course, bringing white Nick Fury into things. Or yeah, I feel like it would kind of have to be white Nick Fury considering like what he does. And Garth Ennis really just goes all in on like the Cold War and shit like that. And I'll be honest, like Fury, My War Gone By, it's like a 7-issue miniseries he did. That honestly might explain the Cold War better than like legit any history textbook I've ever read, or at least the American perspective. Yeah, Marvel, you want to surprise me? Like, make that into like a miniseries, just like a hard hitting, no punches pulled, you know, examination of America's role in the Cold War, starring Nick Fury and Shield. Like, that would get my interest. I would watch every second of that. And hey, Garth Ennis is kicking ass in pop culture wise. I mean, The Boys is really popular, so he's got some clout. Yeah, speaking of Marvel movies and how they're becoming gay camp, in Black Panther 2, speaking of gay camp, movie Namor the Submariner has been revealed and he looks like absolute shit. Yeah, somehow they made vaguely Asian looking Speedo elf look even worse. Yeah, I know he's supposed to be, coded as Latinx in this, even though that was literally never a part of his, shtick. But did you have to make him look like a gay carnival dancer? This movie costume overwhelmingly outgays the Speedo. And, God, I pity whatever Marvel artist has to, like, put Namor in, like, that costume in the comics. 'Cause, whenever they do, like, some movie, they always got to put the shit from the movie into the comics, at least for, like, that year, before everybody mercifully forgets that this existed. But yeah, like, I feel bad for the artist who has to draw that like stupid carnival costume. I feel bad for the writers explaining why Namor would ever wear that. It's so much worse than the Speedo. It's even worse than like that disco costume that he used to wear in the 70s. He had like the open vest and like the collar and like he had like the little like wings on the arms. Yeah, I'll be seeing Black Panther 2. Not. Okay. Let's see. Ponythroat says, despite the race swap, I think Samuel Jackson did a good job as Nick Fury. Yeah, he did. He did do a good job. I'm saying that the Garth Ennis Nick Fury miniseries are specifically about like Cold War, like Cloak and Dagger, and things like that, and sort of like the betrayal of like American ideals. And I don't know if that could really work with a black Nick Fury. I think it would have to be like the grizzled old rat packing like white Nick Fury. Okay, C Punk Messiah says he just watched The Boys and holy fuck, it was brutal. Yeah, it was, but if you think that's crazy, you should read the comics. Like, the comics are legit some of the most violent media I've ever seen. M Detector says everyone loves the Speedo Man. Well, yeah, everybody does love the Speedo Man. I don't know why they're changing it. Shinseki Evans says, doesn't he have a stereotypical Mexican mustache? Yes, he does. They're literally giving Namor like a bandito mustache. This is the. Why? Why would you do this? I mean, if you wanted to make him a person of color, like you could just make him blue. Like his mother, is it Dorma? Who the hell's Namor's mother? I gotta look this up now. This is gonna be eating away at me. Wait a minute. Namor has a Jeep? Okay, sorry, I'm getting off topic here. I gotta look this up. Okay, let's see. Yes, Namor has a Jeep, and it has an article uh, in the Marvel Wikia. This is back in the 40s. And hey, Spider Man has a spider buggy, so, and Thanos has the helicopters, so, Namor having a Jeep isn't too far off. Okay, Namor's mother is Princess Fen. And yeah, she had blue skin. And for that matter, so did Prince Triton in the Fantastic Four cartoon, which they had to call him because they couldn't have the rights to Namor. And he was blue too. Like, why if you want to like why don't you just make him blue? If you don't want to make him white. You have to make him into like some kind of bandito Mexican guy. And again, I don't have anything against Mexican people or anything like that, but like you have to make him as stereotypical as possible. Like this is balls. It's not good. Ponythroat says he's gonna go to a Black Lives Matter rally and say Wakanda ain't real. I think people did that already. Anyway, yeah, so something I saw on Twitter was a YouTuber goes to a Russian McDonald's. It was rebranded and it's just not as good anymore. The buns aren't good, the Coke isn't as sweet. Yeah, that'll show those damn Russians for invading Ukraine. The McDonald's sucks now. Speaking of Twitter, uh, what is this Twitter trend I'm seeing of like, hey, I'm gonna be your anime Pokemon stepmom, naked thought. Like these e-thoughts post, pictures of themselves, doing thoughtery while they're saying, hey, look at me, I'm naked, Pokemon anime gaming. Does nobody else get these on their Twitter timelines? Like, I don't understand this. Are they just throwing out all the search terms to trigger algorithms? Why do they keep coming up on my Twitter? I don't look at e-thoughts. Look at my search history on any social media. I don't follow or subscribe to a single cam whore. Yeah, there's some more interesting things I learned on Twitter this week. Going to the LGBT, barbecue crowd. Two-Spirit is bullshit. More specifically, Two-Spirit is a half-assed bit of pseudo-anthropology done by white liberals to paint an image of the innocent, noble, savage Native Americans dancing about like elves in Arcady and what have you. Much like several other things we could talk about, the tribes are very diverse and they have radically different cultures. I mean, some of them do have, the concept of like, the Bardash or whatever, Two-Spirit. But yeah, not all of them had any concept of a third gender. Some of them were and still are extremely patriarchal, actually. Again, there's nothing wrong with being gay or whatever, but the whole using idealized depictions of a pre-Columbian, tolerant utopia to guilt trip white people is wrong. Okay, let's see. Okay, we got a lot of comments here. Ponythroat asks, how do they do Black Panther 2 with Chadwick Boseman morbid by cancer? Well, like I said, Black Panther is a title. Doesn't have to be, T'Challa, so we'll just get some other guy. Jim Tuner says Black Panther's going to have Namor, Shuri, Ironheart, and a bunch of other characters. It's not going to be a Black Panther movie. Yeah, that's what it's looking like. Fucking Ironheart. I still don't understand how you make a teenage girl successor to Iron Man and you don't call her Iron Maiden. C Punk Messiah says, being in the NSFW community, I see it all the time. I don't fall for it, though. I don't fall for it either because I'm not an idiot, and you're not either. Yeah, speaking of Twitter, and also going back to wrestling, for some odd reason, Buff Bagwell was trending on Twitter. Did he increase his male gigolo prices? No. No. It turns out that Buff Bagwell's Twitter was a lie. It was run by somebody he employed who essentially had free reign to say whatever he wanted. And we thus had a several month period where people thought that Buff Bagwell, a rich boy from Georgia who became a professional wrestler, was some kind of woke leftist. I would literally see tweets saying, wow, I wasn't expecting, woke Bagwell, but here he is. Oh, and by the way, the guy who was running this Twitter was also a child molester, apparently. I highly doubt Mr. Bagwell knew that when he hired him, but yeah. Turns out Bagwell supports Trump. Yeah, who would have thought that somebody from Georgia would vote Republican? Well, if you want a woke middle-aged pro wrestler, Kevin Nash apparently leans fairly leftward from what I've seen. I mean, he blocked Razor Fist. You can tell we're getting to the end of the stream here, close to it, because I'm just kind of rambling on about shit I saw on Twitter. A boomer on Twitter was talking about 50s cars, and yeah, I mean, I don't remember what he said exactly, but yeah, those are some damn good designs. I mean, I care very little about cars, but even I like a 1950s chassis. And if I were to ever buy a fancy car, which I might if I make a shitload of money, I would buy like a 50s Cadillac or some something classy from the mid-century. Yeah, I don't care what anybody says. I like Googie. I like the mid-century aesthetic. Again, a uniquely American thing. Maybe it wasn't like the best thing, but it was our thing, our unique thing. And everybody just kind of threw it to the wayside. This past Tuesday, Tuesday the 5th, right after Independence Day, was National Bikini Day. And that would really be worth celebrating 50 years ago. Actually, even up to 30 years ago. Would still be pretty good. This reminds me of a YouTube video I was watching recently from the channel Voices of the Past, which is really cool. You should look into it. It's a guy, he does, narration, sort of like, radio recreations with, some sound effects, but pretty, staid and reserved, of first-person accounts from history, of pretty, interesting people, like the ancient Chinese ambassador to the Roman Empire, or like, like the first, American to go to Europe, or the first Japanese person to come to America. Yeah, one of these voices of the past was a Chinese guy. Well, actually, I believe he was Korean, but he lived in China for a long time. He came to America shortly after the Communist Revolution. His feelings towards America are mixed, but leaning towards positive, I would say. He certainly points out some flaws, but he has many good things to say about his new country, its people, and its culture. One of the things he talks about is how, one of the things he does like about America is that, in America, this is a country where basically anybody, can work and, have enough food to put on the table. America is so wealthy that, people try to be skinny Where I come from, only the wealthy could be fat, so they would get fat. As far as I can tell, in America, direct quote, the only people in America who don't eat enough are American women. And it's not because they can't get enough to eat, they choose to starve themselves to preserve slender figures. Yeah, imagine a day when the problem with American women was that they were too skinny. What a terrible time period. Yeah, thank God we're not living in those times anymore. Yeah, no, I honestly ought to just have a drop, like a widget on Streamlabs, that plays the chorus of Disney Girls 1957 by the Beach Boys whenever I speak wistfully of the glories that we lost. But reality is not for me, and it takes me back. Oh, fantasy worlds and Disney girls, I'm going back. This fucking country. Anyway, that does it for my prepared remarks. Uh, let's see what the comments have to say. Okay, Shinseki Evans says it would be nice if Hollywood to portray Native Americans as human beings instead of noble, savage tree spirits. Yes, I agree. Okay. Jim Tuner says Buff Bagwell has lots of personal demons. No, really? I mean, he works as a male prostitute, and he's gotten into car accidents. Well, I mean, he'd hardly be the first pro wrestler to get involved in that. Okay. Ponythroat says, my dream car is a Jatava Yugo. Not because it's good, because it isn't, but because it's a Yugo. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't its brand model name like Velada back in its native Yugoslavia? So let me look that up. Okay. Okay, it was not. The Lada was actually Russian. Again, I know not much about cars, so, excuse me for my ignorance again. Okay, Red Pill Reich says oofy doofy is law. I don't know what that is. I'm going to look it up. Okay, on the incel wiki, uh, it's the theory that claims that women prefer to settle down with ugly men. Most incels disagree. Well, I mean, I'm certainly not an ugly man, so I couldn't comment on this. And also, now I have the incel wiki on my search history, so I'm now on an FBI watch list, which is wonderful. Uh, but I guess it would have been more likely to happen back in the day because, I guess men were more expected to be the providers back then, and women, you know, didn't really work as often. So women had to kind of settle with a provider, and considering that the average American woman looked a hell of a lot better back then than she does now, yeah, I guess probably ugly guys were getting like relatively hot chicks back in like the 50s and 60s. So it's not entirely wrong, but you know, it is what it is. Ponythroat says the Beach Boys always came off as a bunch of sex pests to me, especially the lead singer. I very much disagree, sir. I'm a big fan of the Beach Boys. Brian Wilson was, well, didn't Brian Wilson bang some underage girl? I mean, come on, he's a rock star. That's hardly like unique. Yeah, I like the Beach Boys. Okay, fuck you. I like the Beach Boys. Ponythroat says Judy Bagwell on a forklift. I believe Judy Bagwell died recently. Rest in peace, Judge Judy. Okay, Witcher 68686 says conventional deadlifts versus sumo deadlifts, which is better? I've never done sumo deadlifts, so I would have to say conventional. I mean, I have been hearing that like people can like lift more with sumo, So I might have to start doing sumo. But then again, I'm kind of wary of like sort of like wide stance kind of things because I get the idea. Like it's you're widening your stance, means you have to move less distance. And of course, I've been studying for that general science exam. So, work equals force times distance. So if the distance increases, it means that, the distance, decreases from movement. It means you have to, it means you're doing more work. You're doing more force because of a shorter distance. Okay. So yeah, I would have to go with conventionals. Okay. Ponythroat says he once tried to buy a keyboard made in the same small arms factory as the Yugo. It was not meant to be. Hey, Homer Simpson's car was made out of old Soviet tank salvage, so, you know, you're in his company. Ponythroat then goes on to say that the Beach Boys stole tunes from Charles Manson. Yeah, yes, Charles Manson did kind of room with Dennis Wilson for a while. I don't know if they stole a song from him. I know that Charles Manson, he wrote a song and he wanted them to, like, record it. Actually, yeah, I think they did record one of his songs, so, I guess you're right. I'll put it this way, talking about all this Manson stuff, it's still pretty impressive that Mike Love, who's a member of the Beach Boys, is the most hated person in the Beach Boys story when you consider that the Beach Boys story includes Charles Manson, an abusive father, and an abusive psychiatrist. That's astounding, Mike Love. Hey, now 'cause it's a love thing. I hate that man so much. Yeah, when Mike Love was running I think he still technically does kind of run what the pathetic remnants of the Beach Boys are nowadays, which is why they're just like a old people like retirement home act. Brian Wilson does his own solo shit still. Yeah, that was when like they were on Baywatch and they were on Full House and God, fuck Mike Love. Seed Punk Messiah says incels are all concerned with what a lack of pussy does to a man. They don't consider what horrible things pussy can do to a man. Very true. I mean, I stayed in my relationship with my ex for far too long because that was some good stuff. But yeah, she was kind of a bitch otherwise. So I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I know. Okay. Ponythroat talking about Mike Love says I see you also saw that Todd in the Shadows video also. Well, I knew about Mike Love's douchebaggery years before. You know, I knew about the Todd in the Shadows thing, but yes, I did see that video. And that might be like one of the only things Todd in the Shadows has ever produced that I actually liked. I will admit that. God, that man's wildly untalented. Okay, Red Pill Reich says no social engineering and the narratives push toxic masculinity and that women shouldn't have their own LMS and wear the pants. They want to be above the man in all areas, so they choose the soy boy. Maybe to settle down, but like, I am not a soy boy and I, get girls. I've literally been told on several occasions that like women they like submitting to me. You got to keep your frame up. You got to present a masculine frame. You got to be a competent man in the Heinlein parlance, and women will fall in line. I find like I said it a long time ago, and it still holds up. If you just happen to find that every woman you meet is like a contrary, uppity, nagging bitch, maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're weak, and maybe the woman, senses that weakness in you, and she's taking it out on you. Women like to submit to a strong man. M Detector 5 says Todd in the Shadows is all right, but he's not for everyone. He's kind of an asshole from what I hear. And, I hate to pick on somebody's physical appearance, but there's a reason why he stays to the shadows. Hint, hint. Okay, C-Punk Messiah asked, do I ever listen to any black metal like Bathory, Venom, or Mayhem? I listen to a little Bathory. That's about it. Yeah, I'm not super like, I mean, I listen to things other than metal. And I'm gonna be honest with you, when it comes to metal, like, I really don't care for like the, grunting mongoloid kind of style of metal where it's just like, I'm gonna play 20,000 notes really fast and just go bleh. Like that to me, that requires no talent. Sabaton, which I played at the opening of the stream, they have talent. They actually play music. They know music theory. They actually sing. It's like a growly kind of singing, but it is actual singing. It's not just like grunting and roaring. Okay, Ponythroat says, is hating women like AM hates the human race and excuse to not seek vagine. I had to think for a second who AM was, and then I realized it's AM, the Allied master computer, the aggressive menace. I think, therefore I am. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. I, I don't hate women. Like, I don't understand why you should hate women. I mean, women are what they are. Like, they literally evolved to, be kind of hypergamic. That's the way they are. Like, you can't fight that. You can't legislate sexual desire. Like I said in my video last week, all you can do is just make yourself as good as possible. Jim Tuner says correctly, women will test you when they sense weakness. You got to handle it. Exactly. Women hate weak men, and they're going to test you. So you gotta be on guard for that. Which again, if you are making yourself strong, throughout your life, whether you be working a good job, like getting your shit together, doing martial arts, weightlifting, that way you don't have to worry about it. Red Pill Reich says the dysgenic trend shows that women are choosing oofy doofies. I don't think so. I wish women were choosing like, basic, boring beta male providers because at least, those kids would be provided for. I mean, it would have its own issues, of course. But, I don't think that's what's causing dysgenics. What's causing dysgenics is like they're subsidizing like, losers to just kind of spread their seed around and have a bunch of like, single baby mamas raising feral kids. And those single baby mamas, in the hood, like they're not going with boring beta providers. They're going with, some swaggering like alpha male dickhead who's just gonna pump and dump. So if anything, if there's any dysgenic trend, and I think there is, I think that's it. Ponythroat asks, maybe you hate women because they ruined the video game industry or because they voted Hitler into power. Well, yes, obviously. I don't know, like women again, there's no reason to hate women. You gotta learn how to, deal with women. You gotta learn, their ways. But hating them is just folly. I mean, look, I guess I should thank God that when I was, a young lad, the term incel didn't really exist. So even though I was an involuntary celibate, there was not a community of losers that were gonna, stroke my ego and make me feel better about myself for being a loser, come up with all these gay little theories about why I can't get women and me. Yeah, I had some anger towards women back when I was a kid because I wasn't getting any. You know what I did? I made myself desirable. Anyone can do that. Hit the gym, get some interesting hobbies, and learn martial arts. You can even, for all that whining about, millimeters of bone, you can fix that. Like, I'm gonna let you people in on a little secret here. Like, I've been working on like getting my, my chin better. I'm literally chewing rawhide to do it, and I think it's working to be honest. Yeah, you lose weight, you get that chiseled, face. And for the first time in my life, my facial features were literally described as being chiseled when I was doing a modeling gig for the painting class. So I'm like, holy shit, like the chiseling, like chewing rawhide works, damn it. Ponythroat says women getting pregnant by low intelligence frat boys happens in, Africa. Yeah. I mean, high time preference is what it is. I think that's true. C-Punk Messiah says, my female friends in school held me out of the incel mindset. Yeah, I would actually say something similar. Like I've mentioned before, I have, female cousins. We would, kind of like play together and stuff when we were kids. So I had experience with women in a platonic sense. So I was not totally incel. Ponythroat says, saying that there is no reason to hate women, as I said, there's no reason to hate ethnic minorities. No smoke without fire. Out of the edge, sir. Jim Tuner says, hating women is just another sign of weakness, which is women repellent. You gotta look good, be confident, and you have to be successful. Winners get women. Yes, exactly. Thank you, sir. Something else I really find annoying about the incels is that, like, you know why people don't like incels? Well, a lot of reasons. But a lot of it is like you make up these. I mean, one of it is like, something that annoys me is they make up these gay little code words, like oofy doofy and HB 910 and Chad and like Omega and neat bucks and like all these like stupid little like catchphrases and code words. Like you want to know why people don't understand you? Because you're literally using some impenetrable like thieves cant, like Cockney rhyming slang for sexless losers. Shinseki Evans says, just be yourself. That stagnates. Yes, the key is it's not to be yourself. You got to make yourself. Like if yourself sucks, you know, then that's not going to get you anywhere. Here, so I am actually going to be meeting a young lady later tonight. If you want to see what a fucking stud I am, let me read you something from a conversation we had last night. Give me 1 second here. Blah, 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 talking about. Where is it? Come on. Don't tell me like. All right, yeah, like, and I quote the lady that I've been talking to. You, meaning me, are professionally successful. You have cool hobbies and interests, and you are incredibly handsome. So you're winning at life. Yeah, see, that's how I get girls, and the incels don't. I am a winner, and incels are losers. Okay, stop being a loser, and you'll get some girls. I was a loser, and I stopped being it. Stop failing, you failure. Ponythought says, as an Asian man, would you say that some of my comments can be seen as uncharitable to ethnic minorities? Yes, I am. I don't hate anybody, sir. And I know you're sharpening that edge, dude. Out of the edge. Jim Tuner says, don't take advice from women about how to be a man. That's disaster. Damn right. The Virgin Neat Bucks versus the Chad Monthly Tugboats. That is probably the only time that the word, I should say, Chad and anything pertaining to Christian will ever be said in the same sentence. Well, actually, I'm sure some Chad, psychiatrist will make millions of dollars and become world famous by writing his doctoral thesis on Christian, which somebody will do at some point in the future. I mean, if I studied psychiatry, I'd do it myself. Anyway, that was a very long stream. And yeah, I think we're all basically done here. So I'm going to give you people a minute to say what you got to say. So, yeah, say your last words because I got to head out. Okay, nobody has anything to say. So for Larsen Halleck, I'm Larsen.